back to my channel, everybody. Catherine here. First off, I just want to thank everyone who submitted questions for my question and answer video. I put a call out last week for questions and many of you responded and participated, so thank you so much. I'm going to try to get to most all of your questions, I believe. If I forgot anyone, I apologize in advance. And also, if you submitted multiple questions, I just answered one just so that I had an opportunity to answer as many questions from as many people as possible. So thank you guys. Without further ado, let's get right into it. I don't want to take up too much of your time today, so let's go. Question number one is from Ken France. He said, where will you be hiking, or asked rather, where will you be hiking this year? Well, Ken, 2018 looks to be probably my biggest year of backpacking thus far. I'm very excited about what I've got coming up this year. I mentioned it maybe in another video as well, but I have more trips planned this year than I've had any year so far. I've already done one trip, and that was in the San Jacinto area here in Southern California, and I summited San Jacinto Peak, and that was just a few weeks ago, and that was in February. I have a trip coming up actually that I'm prepping for right now, and that will begin next week. That is going to be in the Grand Canyon. I'm really excited about that. I've only been to the Grand Canyon once, and it was for a very brief period. I basically just stayed overnight, kind of passing through as I was traveling from California to Phoenix, Arizona. And I was really in awe. I had enough time to just let my jaw hit the floor. It was just so gorgeous, and I've always wanted to go back there. That was in 2006. I haven't been back there since, so I'm really excited to be backpacking in the Grand Canyon. I don't know the exact route because someone else is planning that, but that is next week. So I'm getting really super stoked on that. In April, I do have another period of time booked to go ahead and go on a backpacking trip. I don't know exactly the location yet. There are a couple locations being thrown around, one of them being the Escalante area of Utah. Also, the Narrows have been talked about, although I don't think that one's going to happen. There's just various options so far, but I believe it's going to be in the Utah or maybe Arizona area, maybe Sedona. That's another one that's been talked about as well. So that is what's scheduled for April. In May, I have a trip that could possibly be taking place in Yellowstone National Park. So that would be my first trip in grizzly territory. However, that one is also still up in the air. There could still be quite a bit of snow in Yellowstone at that time. So it may actually be something here in California. You know, the options are being kind of tossed about right now, so that's still up in the air, but there's definitely a backpacking trip in May. And then in June, I've got a big trip, very end of June into the first week of July, and that's going to be actually my birthday trip. So I believe that's going to be in Yellowstone, and that would be actually my longest trip thus far. And I'm very excited, super stoked, but a little bit nervous as well because I've never gone on that many multiple days. I believe we're talking about 8 days. So just, nervous about my stamina and, whether I'm going to, how I'm going to adjust to that physically, but I'm already just doing some training, doing a lot of squats and a lot of actually upper back workout, because I did notice that that's kind of where I get a little bit sore, with carrying the pack and whatnot. But I'm going to get very prepared for it as well as possible. And then I think that, now that I'm going to be backpacking quite a bit more, that I'll start to become a little bit more conditioned for it as well. So just super excited. Beyond that, I believe that also, pardon me, let me backtrack just a little bit. The one in the end of June and beginning of July, that could also take place in Glacier. That's another idea. But really, as probably you all know, it really just depends on weather conditions, snow conditions, all those types of things. So sometimes you just can't know for certain where you're going to go until you get a little bit closer to that date and you're able to see what the conditions are at any given time. So I believe the fall will also possibly be sometime in Glacier and maybe even the Sierra. That's still up in the air, but I'm going to continue to backpack in the fall and also throughout the summer. Summer we'll probably have some trips in the Sierra, and that's all I know so far. So I'm just getting really excited to get it going, and it's, like I said, it's going to get started next week. Stay tuned for that, and we'll have a Grand Canyon video coming up real soon. So thanks for your question, Ken. The next one is from Josh S. And it says, if I remember right, before you did your first solo hike, you did a car camping trip. Did that help with your nerves? Actually, I did do some solo hiking before the solo camping trip. I have gone on several solo hikes. I have gone, up in the Big Bear area, Sierra area, just kind of day hikes, long hikes. But that was my first solo overnighter, so my first solo camping trip. And you know, the funny thing is, I really surprised myself because I really was not nervous. I felt very calm out there, and it surprised me because I expected to be very nervous and scared, especially at night in the tent alone. And you know, I just kind of had a peace and a calm come over me. It was an area that I knew. It was in the Alabama hills, so I was familiar with the area and the terrain, so that possibly helped. But yeah, I mean, you know, it did help with my nerves because I just realized that I really wasn't nervous. Now, if we're talking about maybe camping somewhere that I'm not familiar with, or like somewhere in grizzly territory or something like that, then it could be another story. But yeah, felt pretty calm. So I would recommend it, you know, maybe starting somewhere that you're familiar with and starting somewhere that's maybe not too far remote and not too far out the backcountry, and see how you do. You might surprise yourself. Thank you, Josh. All right, number 3 is from Double D. What were the worst weather conditions you hiked in? You know, I haven't really hiked in anything too horrible, to be honest with you. When I did the Lake Ediza Thousand Island Lake Loop earlier last year in the summer, actually later in the summer last year, we did have quite a bit of rain and some thunderstorm action. So going through some of the higher, you know, over 10,000 foot passes, we did experience thunderstorms and also lightning and hail. It was a little bit sketchy, actually, and we were somewhat not panicked, but we just weren't sure whether we were going to have to hunker down and kind of wait it out, because it gets very dangerous if you have lightning up at those high elevations. But it appeared that the lightning was further off in the distance, so we just kind of powered through. But we did have to hike in quite a bit of rain, and you know, I just realized getting wet doesn't kill you, and as long as you're safe, and if the lightning's coming anywhere close by, you want to get to lower elevations, you don't want to be anywhere near the highest point, get under cover, and you know, take precautions, because it is serious. People get struck by lightning. But so far that's the worst I've had to deal with, which I'm grateful for that. So I do try to hike in months that are more favorable weather-wise, but you just never know. Mountains have their own weather system, and something can roll in that's completely unpredicted. So hope that answers your question, Double D. 4, hike with Mike. What animal would you love to come across in the wild? I would love to see a wolf. I went to Yellowstone in the fall of last year, 2017, and I really wanted to see a wolf. I think they are just beautiful animals, and I know that they are in Yellowstone. I unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to see one. I did run into some people that I guess knew what specific area to be at and what time, just to have the best opportunity to see them. And they actually did see them earlier that morning, but they stayed there for hours and still hadn't seen one. But I plan on having very high potential of seeing a wolf in the upcoming future when I am backpacking in Yellowstone, because I will be going to areas that are known to have wolf activity. So I will probably see wolves among other things like grizzlies. And a grizzly in the wild, you know, I do want to see one at a safe distance. I really don't want one coming anywhere very close to me or near camp, but I would not mind seeing one from a distance. So thank you for your question, Mike, and thank you for being a great supporter of my channel. You've been around for a long time and I appreciate it, so thanks. And check out Mike's channel as well. Mike has his own channel, Hike with Mike. Question 5, Jimmy Montgomery. Have you ever considered an early spring hike to the summit of Telescope Peak in Death Valley National Park? You know, I have thought about backpacking in Death Valley. I haven't had an opportunity to do so, but the one thing that kind of deters me from doing that is the water situation there. I'm not really too turned on by the fact that you have to carry a lot of water in Death Valley. As we know, it's a dry desert, and I don't think there are very many water sources, if any. So, you know, I like to visit Death Valley, and I'll probably backpack there one day. During the winter is a great time just because there aren't a whole lot of options to backpack in the winter, but it can snow there too, or early, you know, spring. So I'll probably get out there one of these days. It's just, I really think it's a beautiful place, and I've visited several times, so yeah, I'll probably get out there one of these days. It's not some place that I've thought of specifically of going to, but I'll check it out. I'll do a little bit more research and see what it's all about. River Tramp Channel asks, are you going to through hike like the PCT or the Pacific Beach Trail? I haven't heard of the Pacific Beach Trail. I'll have to look that up. I do actually have a through hike planned of the JMT. That is to take place next year in 2018, and that is on the schedule. So I'm really excited about that. That's something that I wanted to do for a very long time, and I'll be going probably with at least 2 other people, and I can't wait. Yeah. You know, when I first started hiking and backpacking, I thought about actually through hiking the PCT, although, you know, I don't know if that's something I still want to do anymore. It's just, you know, taking that much time of your life out for one trail. I mean, I just imagine myself kind of exploring a lot of different options and a lot of different trails and a lot of different locations, and that kind of excites me, the idea of just kind of moving around, you know. And but the JMT, that takes probably about 3 weeks to do, and I know it goes through some of the most amazing and beautiful area of the Sierra. So that's something I am planning on doing in 2018. Stay tuned for that next year. It seems like so far away, but you know, it'll be here before you know it. Brian West 58 asks, what lenses do you generally take with you when using your DSLR for landscapes? For landscapes, you want to use the widest lens possible. Well, not possible, but a wide lens. You want to be able to get as much of the landscape in your view as you can. Right now, the lens that I use is a Canon 17 to 40 millimeter lens, and it's a really nice lens. I actually would like to get the 16 to 35, and then also maybe have even a wider option, you know, especially for mountains. The one issue that I have with the camera that I take with me backpacking, my little Sony RX100, is the widest it goes is 24 millimeters. And for landscape photography, that's very difficult because it really minimizes, you know, your crop, and you can't sometimes get that everything in your shot that you would like, and I've had that issue. I'm thinking of, you know, probably upgrading to a camera to take backpacking and hiking that will allow me to interchange lenses. You know, in hindsight, there are things about the Sony RX100 that I'm not thrilled with. It's a great camera. I absolutely love it and would recommend it if you're not trying to do landscape photography as well and different types of photography with it while backpacking. It just is very limiting. So yeah, you want to go with a wide lens, and you asked about the DSLR, so yes, my 17 to 40 millimeter is what I take with me for landscapes. And you know, I've been really getting excited about my landscape photography, and I'm excited to get to some new areas and get some new images and just the options that are going to be available to me with exploring new places. So there you go. Laura VRC1, what do you think of the Roxy Ann 15? Okay, the Roxy Ann 15 is my new Big Agnes sleeping bag. It is women specific and it is rated for 15 degrees. I've actually had it out now on several adventures, and so I can talk about it a little bit. It's an interesting bag because there's no bottom, and basically it's kind of like a hybrid of a quilt and a bag. So there's a sleeve that you insert your sleeping pad into, and that is the bottom of your bag. The previous sleeping pad I had, I don't think worked very well with it, the Thermarest Evo Light, because it was a mummy-shaped sleeping pad, and the sleeping bag really requires a rectangular sleeping pad. So I did go ahead and upgrade my sleeping pad to a Thermarest Neolite X-Therm Max, and I took that out on my last trip to San Jacinto. The temps did dip down to probably in the low 20s, if not maybe even the teens, and I actually did feel really warm on the bottom part of the sleeping bag. I did notice though that I still felt some cold air through the top. I am a very, very cold sleeper, so I don't know if that's just me, just needing even more warmth, but I wound up taking my down vest that I had with me and tucking it into my sleeping bag and putting it over my legs. I wore my down jacket, and I just feel like you really shouldn't have to do that, especially if you're not, dipping below 15 degrees. So I was a little bit disappointed that I was still feeling some coldness. I'll have to just see, I'll take it out some more and just see. I don't plan on being in temperatures that are too cold, but you just don't know. So yeah, I guess that's, my thoughts on it right now. It's just that I felt that I should be a little bit warmer. So there you go. The Denise Drake asks, how do you find places to go? Well, I actually utilize YouTube a lot and look at other, hiking videos and different trails, just word of mouth from people, other hikers that tell me about amazing trails. I look for places that are beautiful, that are in, areas that I want to visit, and then I just do research on trails in those areas, and that's essentially it. Trails, it depends on, the length of time that I have, so I look for trails that will fit into a time frame that I can actually complete and are in areas that I want to be. And I look at some different hiking sites. I look at Modern Hiker at times, sometimes just going through social media like Instagram and hiking related Instagram profiles where people will mention different trails, and again, I guess that's somewhat like word of mouth. But that's just generally how I decide where I'd like to go. But it starts really with just a general idea of where I want to be, and then locating trails that are in those areas. Thank you for your question, Denise. Megan B, what do you do to protect yourself while solo hiking as a woman? Well, I don't carry a gun. I don't even have a gun license. I don't know how to shoot a gun. So gun is not an option at this point in time. I do carry a knife. I do carry pepper spray or mace, and I also carry a whistle. So essentially right now, that's all I do. I make sure to be very aware of my surroundings, and if I see any kind of sketchy looking, creepy looking character, I just try to avoid any kind of contact with that person. When I sleep at night in my tent, I do have the knife and the pepper spray right beside me, and the whistle actually. And that's really all I do right now. I as far as protecting myself from animals, I just kind of read what you're supposed to do as far as how you're supposed to behave if you do come across an animal, what not to do. For instance, if you're around a bear, you don't run. Most of the cases you want to act big and just face them and kind of back away and give them room, and so it's really important to pay attention to how to react around wild animals. But Again, they're wild animals, so you really have no idea what they're going to do, regardless of what you do to protect yourself. And, I mean, for me, I think, I feel safer being out in the wild than I do in the city a lot of times. So it's funny that I get a lot of people say to me, like, how can you go out there with bears? And, aren't you afraid? And that sort of thing. And I mean, there's some fear there, I'm not going to lie, but I get more sketched out walking in some cities, and I live by the ocean, and I used to shoot a lot of surf photography, and I have a lot of my surfer friends ask me, why are you going out there with bears? Are you crazy? But yet they go out and swim in the ocean with sharks every day, so go figure. They just can't see them as clearly. They're probably swimming right underneath them, and it's just kind of funny. But that's all I do for now. I don't really know how much else you can do unless you have a gun. So, and that's not always going to protect you either, and sometimes it can put you in more danger if not. But I'm not going to get into all that. I have no specific views on all of that stuff politically, so let's not go there. No comments there regarding guns. So anyways, yeah, that's it. Mr. Blue Rose, when you hike to the top of those mountains, do you have to hike all the way? Sorry, I gotta flip the page here. Back. Is there ever a ride? So do I have to hike back, or is there a ride? There's never a ride. If you go up, you gotta come back down the same way on your 2 feet. Unless you come down in some sort of emergency vehicle, but no. There's no ride. You go up there, you got to know that you got to get back down. And so if you, for any reason, think that you are not going to be capable of coming back down once you climb that mountain, you just best not go up there. That's just the advice I give you. But one thing I will say is going down is usually not as hard as going up. So once you've gone up, you've done the majority of the work. Going down is usually a lot smoother and goes a lot more quickly. Except if you have bad knees, it might affect your knees. But the only time that, I would say that you don't have to come back, or you have a car, is if you do some sort of a trail where you end and you have a car parked on the other end and you drive, you stage 2 cars. That's it. But yeah, you got to come back down. You got to come back down. Equatcee, I guess, Equatcee. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Will you do a solo backpacking trip? I have no plans to go backpacking solo. At the moment, I don't have a huge desire to go backpacking solo, so not at the moment. I enjoy having hiking partners, and maybe that'll change. I mean, I would kind of like to do it just to test myself, and challenge myself. I've done the solo camping thing, so I really feel like I'm capable of doing it should I choose to. It's just not something that I really have a desire to do at the moment, and I don't have any plans to in the near future. But, it's funny, there's a lot of things that I have said that I'd never do, and maybe that was something I at one time said I would never do, but I wouldn't say that anymore. I've surprised myself enough to know that you might just see me out there doing it, and it could be this year. Who knows? But no plans in the near future. Hiking for hotcakes. How does your pocket rocket stove do at high elevations and in wind? I've never had any problem in the high elevation. It works just fine. In the wind, I've never had it extinguish actually, but I have thought about getting a wind guard because, when the flame's blowing around, you're just wasting fuel. It takes a lot more fuel to heat your water or your food, and it's just going to kind of suck up your fuel a little bit more quickly, but I've had no issues. I do know that I hike with people that have the jet boils, and the one thing that I would say with the jet boil, although it boils very, very quickly, I've seen on multiple times them having problems igniting it. So whereas I can ignite mine like that, although their water may boil faster, I can have mine lit, lickety split. So I've been really happy with it. I know there's a new version out, the Pocket Rocket 2, so I'm thinking about possibly upgrading to that. I think it's actually has the prongs come out a little bit further, so you can put a bigger pan on there. I believe that's one of the features. But I just love it. I really feel like I have no reason to change at all. It's been a great little piece of the gear for me. So I would highly recommend it. You, I think, had mentioned that you're going to be doing some hikes at high elevation. So I would happily recommend that to you. Mr. Donaldson's HLS. What has been the toughest situation you have experienced in hiking or packing, and how did you fight through it and or deal with failure? I would have to say it was this very last backpacking trip where I experienced altitude sickness. I have never had that affect me before. I've hiked in high altitude multiple times and backpacked. I've gone in on, from sea level on day one and backpacked to high elevation in the Sierra and just have never had an issue. This last trip I had an issue. I was feeling very nauseous. I felt like I could really puke basically at any time, and it just was not comfortable. I powered through. I did what I set out to do, and that was summit the peak, and that's what I went there to achieve, and I did achieve it. So I'm proud of myself for that. Coming back and backpacking out and trying to get out of there, it was a struggle. I had a tough time, but I made it. I had, my hiking partner, which was my niece Christine. She was there to boost my morale and kind of help me to get through it during like the tougher times. But it's kind of that mind over matter thing where I just knew like the only way out of here is by my own 2 feet, and unless you end up pushing your little spot button and having somebody rescue you, you got to get out of here. So I just powered through. I knew that that was what I had to do, and I didn't feel well, but I actually, I made it through. And, so far that's the toughest situation, but it was an eye-opener. It really was, because I, always felt really, relatively good on hikes, and that was one time I did not feel good. So, I didn't fail that time, although I did, struggle a little bit with the embarrassment of, my niece seeing me kind of in that kind of vulnerable situation, I guess, and that was something that I guess maybe more of an ego-driven thing, I suppose, but, I didn't like her seeing me like that. I know that she has always commented that I've been, kind of a good hiking partner and someone that powers through and that's always positive, and I felt kind of a little bit weak in that moment. So that was probably more the mental sort of a situation I had to deal with, and again, that's probably just ego, driven, and people get sick, people don't feel good, there's nothing wrong with that, there's no shame in that, and I know that. So that's just how I dealt with it, and looking back on it, I dealt with it the way I needed to deal with it, and I'm proud of how I powered through. So that's a good question, thank you. Cornelius Walker, have you ever put your skills to use to help find missing hikers? I never have had to do that, thankfully. I have been on a trail where it was in the Bishop Pass, on the Bishop Pass Trail, going to Long Lake on a hike where there was a person, a 70-year-old man that had been missing, and he had been missing, I think at the point that I did the trail, it was going on close to 2 weeks. So there was rescue activity going on. There were helicopters flying overhead, and there were flyers everywhere at the trailhead just to keep an eye out for them. And so I really did, when we were on the hike, I just kept my eyes open, peeled, just looking for any kind of a clue. And unfortunately, that event ended in tragedy. After, this was in October, and there was a snowstorm while he was out, and the snow wasn't bad. The trails weren't covered in snow when we went on the trail just about a week and a half later, but that was during the last year, actually the prior year, so 2016, but 2016 into 2017 was the biggest snowfall of on record, in the Sierras. So after the snow melted, as it got into the summer months last year, they did find the gentleman's remains. So it was a sad ending, but personally, I have not had to put my skills to use, and I hope to never really have to, but it is a possibility that you can run into that type of situation out there on the trail at any given time. Damien Cortez, any advice for the big guys starting out backpacking? Damien, thank you. I would suggest that you check a trail that is rated as easy. There's an app called All Trails that I use quite a bit. So if you're looking in your local area, I would download that All Trails app and search for hikes in your area that are rated easy. I would say that you start with something that has little to no elevation gain or loss, and that you can get into a camping area in relatively low miles, like maybe 1 or 2 miles. Probably hike in a summer month or a month where you're not going to have to bring a lot of extra gear as far as like carrying extra weight in winter gear. Maybe also somewhere where water is plentiful, so you don't have to carry a lot of water because you want to probably keep your pack weight down. And that would be it. I just would start out very small, low mileage, easy hike. Get into somewhere where you can camp real quickly and just do an overnighter to begin with, and just test yourself out that way. Maybe do a few of those, and then maybe start pushing yourself a little further if you feel like you're kind of at a level that you feel comfortable with. And I commend people for getting out there no matter what shape or size, and if they happen to be somebody who's a little bit on the bigger side, as Damien puts it, or a big guy or a big girl, or if I see anyone in the world of social media either making fun of or cutting down a person because of their size that's getting outside, I basically lost zero respect for you, or lost all respect for you and have zero respect for you. And I do see that, and it's just people who just are mean-spirited, and I don't know, kind of hide behind the cloak of their, computer monitor and, speak badly and make bad comments. And I give anyone credit of any shape, size for being outside, and the outdoors is for everyone. There's no reason anybody should be talked down to or badly about for getting out there. So get out there, Damien, and it's mind over matter, and you're walking. Just put that one foot in front of the other, and just don't worry about it, and you'll get there. And I hope you get outside. I really do. I know people that are, would consider themselves on the bigger side, and they are very strong people. It doesn't mean that they don't have strength. So yeah, go for it, Damien. I'd love to, hear about you getting out there. If you do wind up going on a trip, comment on my channel, comment on one of my videos, because I'd love to hear what you did and what you thought about it. And don't let your size stop you. There's plenty of hiking, plenty of backpacking that you can do. So get out there. Thank you. And last question, I was asked actually by 2 individuals, Oingo Boingo and Jimmy Montgomery, and this is more on the personal side of things. And they asked, are you single? Well, as of November of 2017, I am no longer single. So the answer to that is no. I actually have met a really awesome person and a special person to me, and you guys are going to have a chance to meet him in my next video, and as he will be joining me on the Grand Canyon trip. And actually he's planning the trip, so it's more like I'm joining him, but you will get to meet him, so stay tuned. I'm really excited to introduce him to you guys, and I think that you'll like him. He's a very like-minded individual, and just real excited for you guys to get to meet him. So I think that's going to wrap up this video for today. I really appreciate all your questions. I appreciate all your support. I appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel. Thank you for taking a moment to comment. I love everyone who comments. I appreciate that there's interaction going on, and I try to return or reply to all of them if I can. So I think there are very few that I miss at this point. My channel's still small enough that I can reply to each individual, so I do appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we will see you very soon. Next video will probably be the Grand Canyon video. You get to meet my guy. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.